There are a few issues in Rhode Island that have been so uh, across party lines, across generations, across regions, in terms of just interest and expectations as shoreline access. And we've seen significant changes on a legislative basis over the last couple of years, and potentially there will be more, as we've discussed here on the Newport This Week video podcast. But look, the reality is that there are still people who want to block access to the shoreline. Sometimes this is very clunkily done. Sometimes it's with a more sophisticated approach, and sometimes it's just by the nature of the infrastructure that's in place. We're joined by, quite frankly, the one and only Lynda Stevenson of Friends of the Waterfront, which has assumed even more responsibility in essentially monitoring shoreline access and access to any sort of public right of way. So, Lynda, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
You're taking over the monitoring of 6 public access points along the cliff walks that was previously monitored by Clean Ocean Access before they folded earlier this year. And I guess let's just start right there. Cliff Walk, obviously in the news with some significant closures, but from your standpoint, what does that project and aspect of your work look like?
So we're very fortunate that so many volunteers stepped up to help us with this effort. And in addition to those 6 on the Cliffwalk side, we also do 18 rights of way on the Harborfront side. But a big shout out to our Vice President, Tom Gibson, who recognized that there was going to be a void when Clean Ocean Access disbanded, that the monitoring was going to fall out. So he encouraged us, the board at Friends of the Waterfront, to take over. We discussed it, and then we put the word out that we were looking for monitors, and was extremely thrilled to have so many people step up and agree to take the task on, because not only do we have the 18 sites on the waterfront, the 6 now on Cliff Walk, but we monitor everything in between too. So basically from Cypress Ave by the Newport Pell Bridge all the way to King Park. So in addition to the Cliff Walk now. So it is a big task, and we worked with some former Clean Ocean Access people to get our website ready for the monitors to easily be able to log on and let us know what they observed. And then once all that information is gathered, we do send quarterly reports to both the city and CRMC.
Very interesting stuff. And Phil Cozzolino, in an article in Newport This Week back on April 11th, which isn't all that long ago, it was yesterday. Calendar sometimes gets away from us, but the article notes that there's work to have CRMC recognize and designate each of those 6 access points along the cliff walk as state recognized. Why is it important that those are state recognized?
It just really helps if there's any disputes, and it also helps with enforcement when there are problems, because then it's not just Friends of the Waterfront, raising their hand and saying, hey, there's a problem here, which the city may or may not be able to take on because it's a costly thing. And if we say, hey, they just planted a shrub that goes in the middle of the right of way, the city may say, hey, I've got Cliff Walk, falling apart. I've got First Beach with resiliency problems. I've got, King Park with resiliency problems. And I got Parati Park that needs a new bulkhead. We just get kind of down further on the list. So it just really helps to keep everyone in the same pocket of what our focus is and how we can continue to keep it clear and safe for the public.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, and absolutely sort of that designation, it does keep it atop, or at least towards the top of mind when it comes to some of these issues. It's interesting because this is something that there's so many different aspects to, and I'm sure you can speak to this way better than I could or anybody else, but particularly in Newport, really statewide, we see this, but there's all different reasons why when we talk about shoreline access or coastal access issues, there's a number of different reasons. It can be something like private development. It can be utility companies. It can be governmental. It can be literally just a rogue civilian that is installing their own either barricade or signage to dissuade someone from accessing. So with all of those different problems and the monitoring and work that you do, what would you say is the through line in terms of when something gets flagged, what's the consistent starting point for these issues that seem to pop up often?
I would say, and please recognize I've only been in the position of president for the past year, but typically we discuss it as a board and then we discuss it with our attorney. And sometimes it could be just one of us calling the owner or obstructor, whatever the case may be, and trying to resolve it easily that way. And if it doesn't work that way, then sometimes we have to either get the city or CRMC involved, and our attorney would, start formalizing objections to the person obstructing.
Mm. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I think back to it may have been 2020 or 2021 when I would park along, somewhere in a miscellaneous to be left unnamed place that was quasi legal, and then you'd walk down to Rejects Beach and go out on the cliff walk. And I remember one time encountering somebody put a sawhorse up over on the cliff walk off Ledge Road. They had created their own signs. It looked like a very bad attempt to make the signs look as if they were city issued. But to the random person, to the tourist, they would see that and almost certainly not be able to discern whether it was formal or, as I said, a rogue citizen that decided to install that signage. Eventually, it was removed after I hounded City Hall. But what are some of the most egregious examples of shoreline access blocking that you've encountered?
Oh gosh. um, Certainly, there's places where they put gates up. There shouldn't be gates. Even now, when you do the harbor walk, when you start at Mary Ferrizoli Park, our founder, who we're certainly grateful for her hard work, you have to, before you get to the Newport Yacht Club, you have to go through a chain link fence that is in fact chain closed, so vehicles can't get through. So it looks like it's not open to the public, but that is actually how we access further into the Newport Yacht Club. You have restaurants that continue to put tables and chairs where they shouldn't, some things like that. I don't want to call anyone out here as having big problems, but there's cars or trucks that park in the right of ways. There's like I said, shrubbery that gets further into the right of way. So it's a combination of things, honestly. Over the years, there's actually, you can see the encroachment looking at past photographs where first it was a shrub and now there's a balustrade to stop a car from hitting it, and and now there's a utility pole. So it definitely is a number of things, and that's why we're so happy that so many people rose to the occasion here and signed on as monitors to help us, because it is a lot of territory to cover. And I've already seen them out there, even though we've only had one training session. I've already walked into people while on my jaunts along the waterfront, taking pictures and checking things out. So I think it's a win-win for Newport in every aspect. And I just love that so many people are passionate about the waterfront like you and I are, because it just speaks volumes to the residents that we have here in Newport.
I completely agree. Lastly, when you think about this on a statewide basis, there are all kinds of different mechanics or scenarios that take place. You think about Westerly in particular, or even Charlestown and other spots where you have these fire districts. Certainly, Bonnet Shores comes to mind. The fire districts are a nebulous entity that is best left for another discussion, but they're oftentimes used as ways to restrict or deny access to the shoreline. And there's so many other examples of this. There's a pretty well-known that actually went nationally viral example in Middletown. But Newport, for the most part, we see less of a statewide or regional conversation around the privatization of public shoreline access. What do you think it is that separates Newport from some of these other areas? If it is in fact separated, at least on a media headline level, it seems to be a little less prevalent and a little less systemic than it is in other parts of the state.
I think that their shoreline is a lot different than ours. So where we're focusing, I mean, think about it. The cliff walk takes up a huge amount of territory, along Newport's shoreline. Then you've got First Beach, which obviously is public. And then as you go further, you've got, Ocean Drive, that you just don't have the beaches and the shoreline that you do in some of those South County places. And so then what happened for Friends of the Waterfront was honestly the buildup of the condominiums along the waterfront that started to block not only the view, but the public access to what had been, constantly for hundreds of years, access to the waterfront. And so that's really why the group was founded. It wasn't so much about getting to the beach as it was about getting to the harbor, in both ways, from people who are on a boat getting to shore and people, walking down Thames Street having access and a view of the water that way. So I think it's really just a combination of our shoreline being so different and the South County being a lot more where it's just residential houses on the beach.
Yeah, no question about it. That's exactly it, I believe as well. And what a great discussion. Like I said, we could have this for like a 4-hour symposium. Perhaps we should. Maybe that'll be a Newport This Week idea that we put together for some time at Salve or something like that. Lynda Stevenson, Friends of the Waterfront, taking on a lot of work, additional work in the wake of clean ocean access dissolving, and really just doing tremendous. We'll put it this way. It's something
Effort.
we can all get effort.
It's a lot of effort, but we're happy to do it, and we're thrilled to have the support of so many people. But I hope people will join us, newportwaterfront.org, if they haven't already, and enjoy all the things we have going on, because there'll be, our April 20th cleanups coming up at King Park. We've got the summer concert series also starting in June at King Park, and our guided harbor walks. I hope they'll check out on Facebook. We're starting something new this year. We're going to do a scavenger hunt along the harbor walk.
Nice.
So I'm hoping that can bring a lot of families down there to enjoy our waterfront.
As it
Thanks,
should.
Bill.
Thank you.